to begin our session.
We'd like to ask you to join us in just beginning to focus your energy. I suggest for a moment that you might let your eyes close and in your own way just begin by connecting with the breath, just noticing the breath. And with the exhalation, just beginning to let go of some of the busyness of the day. And with the in-breath, the inhalation, just really sensing yourself arriving in this place anew. And in your own way, just beginning to quiet the mind. And somehow just allowing your awareness to connect with the heart, to notice the heart. And from this place, we'd like to honor the spirit of Ayahuasca, La Madre. And we'd like to express our gratitude to her for her guidance and her healing. We ask that we all be protected, free from harm. And we take truth this afternoon, or we take refuge in the truth of our own experience. And we ask that our sharing somehow contribute to the healing in these difficult and challenging times. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a little piece of the vine and an image and some things here on the table too to create a tiny altar. And that's because, well, first let me welcome you all. Thank you. And those of you still coming in, take a deep breath too and settle down. And may I ask for the slide person to actually change the slides, because I'll forget. So about every 5 minutes, if you just change one, then I don't have to think about it. Thank you. Here, I was given a joke yesterday, and I thought it was appropriate to start with a joke, you know. It's a cartoon. I'll just describe it to you. It's two serpents on the tree of knowledge in the Garden of Eden, and in the distance behind some bushes you can see the head and shoulders of a man and a woman, obviously Adam and Eve, speaking. And one serpent is saying to the other, "I hear Eve wears the plants in the family." That was just too appropriate, right? So I'm going to say a few things about this moment, our form, and that sort of thing. And then we're each going to give a short presentation, maybe a little shorter than was originally anticipated, because we also, the four of us, we met over lunch today and discussed feelings we had and what we thought would work and flow. And we'd like to have a sort of group conversation on stage about some issues that we know would be enriched by our mutual examination of them. And then at the end, we will open it up to questions. And we have nearly 2 hours, and that's a long time, I know. So we'll hope that it keeps changing and keeps you engaged, but also that we can model a cooperative form of presentation here, which is, of course, one of the specialties of women, is our ability to cooperate with each other. And I have to say, when Ralph first invited me some months ago to be on this panel, I groaned, and he knows me well, and it's okay if I gripe, I think, and he still likes me. So so I groaned and said, oh, not another women and something or other panel. You know, it's sort of like the ghetto phenomenon at every conference, especially psychedelically oriented conferences. And I said, you know, my conditions are that I need to have a say in who's going to be on it, and I need to be able to say how I feel about women's panels in general as a phenomenon. And so so this is what I think. You know, we're all trying, if we're seekers and if we're taking medicine, what many of us call medicine, of one sort or another, it is in the effort to evolve and to be more conscious and to move towards some kind of enlightenment. And we need to be very careful and very conscientious, I feel, about how we act that out in our daily lives. And that means we have to really show up for the truth about how we take care of each other and how we respect each other in our families, in our relationships up close, and in the social structures that we participate in. We know, we all, I believe, will acknowledge that the world has been run by that wonderful, rich term, patriarchal hierarchy for a really long time, and it pervades many, many cultures, not just European. And, you know, it's hard to say how far back it went, and there are theories about that. But what we do know is that it's still happening. And we also have learned in this generation, in fact, that we do have the power to change the world to a certain degree. And although the situation for women is changing, it's still got a long ways to go. I feel that as the so-called consciousness community, one of the pitfalls is that we tend to pat ourselves on the back for being a little more enlightened than the average person on the street, you know, because we're following this path of light and because we're taking these plants and medicines. And it's dangerous to do that, because it may mean that we don't review the deep structure of social patterning that we have, as well as we might. I mean, we know we go into these sessions and these circles and we do come up with really deep material, but we don't necessarily come up with it if we don't want to see it. This medicine is a tool, and we only use it to work on what we recognize needs work. And so I feel that now, 25 years into having a psychedelic community, a consciousness community, we could be moving better in the realm of balance between the masculine and the feminine. And, you know, to acknowledge what works, Ralph was very pleased last night after the panel. You know, he said, hey, look, Kat, you know, I dug up some women. I might have used the word dug up. But, and it's true. I mean, here we are, and we're sprinkled through, and at first it seemed like there were very few, hard to find, you know, and it's partly, I'm not just saying this is a male imposition, it's partly that we are often reluctant as women to use our voices in the public, but partly that's because the public context is this system, you know, where we haven't been in it and acknowledged in it, and we're not linear, and we don't present in that way as much. I mean, I'm generalizing, but as much. So I urge all consciousness seekers to be in our lives modeling the kind of equality and recognition and respect for the feminine that we say in our words we would like to see in the world. And so therefore I think that on the next ayahuasca conference, there should be a panel called Men and Ayahuasca. And men can look at their issues through that profound lens, just as we are now. One of the benefits of it is that we got to have a great meeting, today, and we, at the end of it, held hands and said a prayer, and we have things that we can say about being women in relationship to this experience. So it's not, that there aren't things to say. It's just this isolation, as though all the rest of the domain is open to men and a few women, and then this is an enclave, kind of. That's my comment about that. And so we're going to begin with Annelise. She's going to tell her story of healings that she's experienced through ayahuasca, and then we'll go on.
What I will be sharing today is drawn from my 18 years with the União do Vegetal from 1977 to 1995. I'm not a representative of the União because I left 5 years ago, but I have high regard for the União do Vegetal, and I have many, many good friends there. This is something that came to me in the redwoods from ayahuasca. When I speak to you about ayahuasca, I speak to you about love. I speak to you about compassion, and I speak to you about listening. I speak to you about love because ayahuasca invites us to experience a very profound love, the love in our hearts, the love of Great Spirit, the unconditional love of a mother who nurtures and empowers. I speak to you about compassion because with ayahuasca we gain an empathetic vision of all creation. With compassion we are less critical and judgmental of others because we are sensitive to their feelings and experiences. I speak to you about listening with our hearts, listening to nature, to our bodies. And we're going to get into body stuff today. At least I am. So prepare yourselves. What I'm going to be speaking about seems lifetimes away. When I was 21, early years, it's deep house cleaning, clearing the clutter, the debris, pulling the weeds in my garden to make way for light, to make way for the sacred tea, to be filled evermore. Ayahuasca helps us attune to the subtleties of the body. I'll be sharing 3 examples of this. When I drank ayahuasca for the first time, I was a 21-year-old university student in Sao Paulo, Brazil. I was a high fashion model, and I was suffering from bulimia. I knew it was a horrible thing. I'm deeply ashamed of it. It's an offense against nature, an offense against my body, but I didn't have the inner strength to put an end to the debilitating cycle. It is interesting that I was drawn to a spiritual group where purging is very much a part of the experience. And I'm glad I don't have to go into what vomit's all about because Jose Campos did a very good job with that. One evening in a session, I had to vomit. And I went to the bathrooms, they were all full. So I went outside to purge. Well, as soon as I got outside, I forgot all about vomiting because I was drawn to the sky, brilliant night sky. And I saw a web of light connecting the stars, planets, and life on Earth. And I saw how life is all interconnected and how my thoughts and actions have repercussions that are greater than I am. I saw how small I am, yet what I do has repercussions that are greater than I am. So I decided then and there that I really needed to get a hold of this. And I did. The impact of the experience was so profound. I made a promise to myself I will never do this again. It was so far-reaching that it cloaked my emotions and overruled any tendency towards bulimia in the following days, weeks, and months. I was cured. I regained respect, appreciation, and gratitude for myself and for Mother Earth, the living, pulsating being who so generously gives of her body with nourishing food for all creatures as mothers give infants their breasts to suckle. The second area I'm going to address is rape and sexual assault. Between the ages of 17 and 21, I traveled on my own to Eastern and Western Europe and Brazil. I was sexually assaulted 8 times, and one of these incidences culminated in rape. In the following session shows how ayahuasca opened my body and invited recognition of the psychosomatic tension I had been storing from these traumatic experiences and offered me the opportunity to clear it. Anna and I drank ayahuasca at the home of another friend, Julia, who said we could use her apartment while she was away. While I sang the opening shamadas, I felt energy emanating to and from my uterus. I felt my voice empowered by my womb, and my womb serving as a portal of spirit. This place of a woman's innermost sensitivity and creative birthing is a place of connection and flow between the inner and outer. I had just finished the opening shamadas, and the buhashira, expanded state of consciousness, was strong when Julia's boyfriend arrived at the sliding glass door of the apartment, speaking in a loud and aggressive voice, motioning that he wanted to come in and get something. Julia had told him we would be at the apartment and wanted privacy. I immediately felt an energetic invasion of the sacred and vulnerable space my friend and I were in, the womb, the place of spiritual connection. A negative current in me wanted to block his entrance, but instead I let him in. It was obvious he was motivated by curiosity, but his aggressive approach violated our space. I reacted by feeling disrespected, which triggered a slew of negative thoughts after he left, every one of them having to do with a past sexual assault. One by one, with the mere intimation of a memory, I relived traumatic experiences and had to rush to the bathroom to physically purge the somatized memory in my body. The purging was deep, visceral, showing me I needed to free myself of the painful grip these memories had on me. I got so sick I thought I couldn't get sick anymore, but I did 8 times. The cleansing was deep down, bile from my liver until there was no more. I even doubled up with contractions and bled on Julia's elegant sofa when one of the negative memories hit me. As Carolyn Mice says, it is incredibly costly to keep wounds alive. I had given my power away to other people and past events. It took the physical manifestation of getting radically ill in the session to make me aware of this. I had to cleanse myself of the memory, purge myself of its burden, let it go. Ayahuasca helped me let it go. The third example also has to do with listening to my body. This is a little lighter. I had just made love with a boyfriend for the first time 3 days before this session. In this session, ayahuasca told me that I had a fertile egg in my body, and I was given a choice to either allow the egg to journey on through my body or to have it harbor in my uterus. I made an immediate conscious decision to allow the egg to journey on through. The second time I got pregnant was with my ex-husband, who's Brazilian. Same thing, it was ayahuasca who told me I was pregnant. And so she tells us, it means inner body wisdom, that ayahuasca awakens. And that pregnancy ended in miscarriage. I have been able to make important decisions in the light of consciousness thanks to this powerful and profound plant ally. I chose to leave the União in 1995 to focus on other dimensions of spiritual growth and not to use entheogens at present, but who knows in the near future. The UDV, União do Vegetal, provided me with an important foundation for the spiritual work I am now doing, dream work, hospice, and Qigong. From my years with União do Vegetal, I know the benefits of being in a field of consciousness that invites clarity, serenity, and love. stilling one's mind and surrendering into the heart with focused and sincere intention allows an ever-present current of love to circulate within and without. There are unquestionable benefits of being in a unified field that resonates love, and I invoke this state through prayer when I am with people who are dying, who are in need of assistance. Ayahuasca provided me with the opportunity to experience time and time again the powerful loving energy generated in this field of consciousness, which I now access without the use of entheogens. It is a conscious exercise in opening and reopening one's heart.
This is Aparecida Groome.
I'm going to speak about ayahuasca also from a very feminine perspective, which is the perspective of body sensations. So I want to start by the sight and the smell. And I feel the tea like the milk of the mother, the dark milk of the Mother Earth. And it's with that openness that I drink it. Sometimes it tastes bad, but there's always a sweetness to it. And something that says, yes, this feels right. So it's about inner receptivity, and this is one experience that I had with ayahuasca, was the total identification with the planet. So my body became the body of Gaia. And it became very clear to me that she is speaking through these plants, through all these plants, about our need to go back to nature, start polluting our bodies and our planet, realize that we're all one. We're not separate, we're all connected, we're all interdependent. And the beauty of the inner receptivity is that it is able to take in all our shit, our waste, our dead bodies, and our negativity, and transform. It's not a passive receptivity. It's very active in its seemingly passive way. So it takes it all in, and it transforms into more life and love for us, nurturing. So some themes that were very present in my experiences were also the identification with big cats and snakes, and these animals were teaching me how to be in my body and how to move, and these teachings were part of my work. What became my work? What is my work now with the dance? So I actually use my experiences and transform them into exercises practical exercises. So it's not just the idea, but also a practical way to do it. The snake, which is it's so present in the experience with the tea. It's the most ancient symbol for the goddess, and it's been demonized by the patriarchal mentality, but it really is an incredible symbol for life itself, for the DNA and the way that the energy moves inside our body, our life force and our sexual energy. If we let it, if we just let it be, it works its way through our bodies just like a serpent. And it flows and it undulates through the paths of least resistance, and it surrounds whatever blocks we have in our bodies and just squeezes it or eats it, just like a serpent does. And that is an incredible knowledge, because this is something that is open to all of us at any time. If you just breathe and start to move your body and let that energy circulate through you, there's no disease, no depression, there's nothing that could be there. It's really amazing discovery for me, and also another tool that I use in my work with the dance. Another theme that was very present in my visions was visions of the sacred couple making love inside of me. I just realized that that is who I am. And I'm saying who I am, but that's who all of us are. We have that feminine and masculine inside of us, perfectly entwined in love, making love all the time, right inside of us. If we just pay attention to it, if we just stop and look at it and sense it, smell it, it's there. So from that, that is a very healing experience, because from there, you're not gonna just look for somebody to fill that void, that emptiness, and that need. So that's been a very powerful connection for me. Another thing that was very present in my visions, it's various images of women dancing, different women from different cultures doing these different dances. And they became, for me, my main dance teachers. So what I started to try and do was to duplicate that physically with my body. And that's another tool that I use in my work, which is visualization. That's something else that if we just let the music play and close our eyes, we're going to start to see the music, because the music has form and color and movement and shapes, and it moves in different ways, and it sways, and it swirls, and it whirls, and it dances. Another experience for me was I had a lot of experiences about personal karmic ties that became during the process of a few journeys. They became they turned into collective patterns of pain in relationships. And it got to a point where I could feel perfectly both sides, the side of the victim and the side of the perpetrator. And the pain that is present in both sides. And that was an incredible opening of my heart to this terrible dance of suffering and pain that we human beings have been doing for millions of years. And what came out of this for me was a deep feeling of forgiveness, self-forgiveness, forgiveness for humanity, self-acceptance, acceptance for humanity, deep, deep compassion for pain and for both sides, both ends of pain. And also I like to be very practical, and that made me think about what an incredible thing would be for criminals who are in prison, who committed these crimes, and also for the families of victims to have that awareness. I think this would be really revolutionary. So another theme that was very present in my experiences was the sacrifice, either by fire or by dismemberment. And it's really the sacrifice of the ego, the sacrifice of dualistic thinking. And these experiences always led me to an incredible cosmic consciousness. And this cosmic consciousness feels rather familiar. I think we've all been there in that moment where you're watching a beautiful sunset and you just feel like you're expanding and in awe for life. Or when you see your baby has just been born, or these moments in life where we really go beyond. It's as simple as that. It's just a state that is always there. So that was one of the. These are some of the incredible gifts that I got from the goddess, who I believe is behind all this. Is the planet healing us through this incredible medicine, these incredible plant teachers healing us so that we can give it back to the planet, being more aware, not recycling, and doing everything we can to minimize all the harm that's being done to the planet. Thank you.
Diane is our next speaker. Thank you.
Well, this is the second time in my life that I have accepted an invitation to speak publicly about my experience with ayahuasca. Ralph had asked me at the very last moment at the conference in Manaus to join a panel, and I had to make a quick decision, and I stepped forward then, and I found myself stepping forward again for this conference. It's a new experience for me to speak about things that I hold as really very deeply private and personal, sacred in this kind of context. And when I ask myself why I would be willing to speak about really deep and important experiences in front of 500 people, I realized that for me, it's really time to show up and be seen in that way. And so I'm here. Feels like a big step to take personally, and I also feel like I am taking it collectively for a lot of my friends and acquaintances. One aspect of my background that I didn't talk about last night was a decade of work with people who were suffering with life-threatening and catastrophic illnesses. I focused actually a 12-year cycle in my life working in the context of death and dying, and found myself really attracted to that mystery in a very deep way. And along the way, I had the great blessing of talking to many people at the end of their life, and really through my own experience as well, just developed such a deep and profound trust in a deep understanding in the notion that we are not the body, and that there is an aspect to our being that really does survive the death of the physical body. I became very interested in healing and found my definition of healing shifting over time, that it didn't necessarily mean healing in a physical way, but there were ways in which people could find healing even with the death of the physical body. At the end of that cycle of time, I had the good fortune of connecting with the work of Stan Groff. I heard him lecture in 1986. He was at that time leaving a long residency at Esalen as a scholar there, and looking for 30 students to really embark on a study of transpersonal psychology with him. And I was able to free my life and actually begin a long study and then a deep professional association with him. So for the last 12 years, my work has really been based on the healing potential of non-ordinary states of consciousness. When I had the opportunity during a trip to Brazil, as I said last night, to join a session in Brasilia of the UDV, I was really excited to have yet another opportunity to explore deeply this notion of the healing potential of deep, expanded states of awareness. It was, as I touched on last night, a really deep, extraordinary experience I had that first time with the UDV. A year later, I had the opportunity of working with Jose Campos, and really found that my personal preference was toward the shamanic mode of working, that for me the connectedness with the natural world, working in a setting that allowed for that deep connection with earth, with night, with sky, with the vibrational quality of sound was really my form of preference. My very first experience with the tea was an absolutely overwhelming one. I felt absolutely devoured by the experience. I had never had any experience like it. With all of my work in non-ordinary states, meditative practices, nothing could touch the intensity and strength of the experience. For me, the strongest association I had was of the goddess Kali. Kali was a really strong presence for me with that first experience. In retrospect, I feel like that overwhelming session was really an initiation into what has developed into a 12-year exploration with the tea at this point. For me, the prominent theme has been one of the Great Mother, of birthing. The experiences for me tend to be very, very, very energetic. I go through a tremendous amount of movement in the body, tremoring, shaking, sometimes just almost a violent vibrational quality, sacrum hitting the ground uncontrollably for very long periods of time. Difficulty of putting words to some of these experiences. Yeah. About 3 years ago, I was able to take the time, accept an invitation, and have a very extended period of time in the jungle in Peru, up several rivers and tributaries from Pucallpa, and really focus on the kind of work with the diet that both Connie and Jose were speaking about earlier today. I felt it was really important to journey to the mother's home, to really make the pilgrimage to that place. I worked under the supervision of one Shipibo shaman, a mestizo shaman as well, and then another Shipibo woman healer, an herbalist. So we had 3 indigenous healers with us, and for 2 weeks we're able to really observe the diet. My initial feeling about the diet, or my initial understanding, really was very expanded during that time. I can't say enough about really approaching the work with that level of mindfulness. I think the opportunity to really step out and unplug from the busyness of life, to really put ourselves in that kind of setting, to really observe the food restrictions, to work with plant baths in the way that we did, and then to work with the medicine in a very intense way every other day for a sustained period of time was really instrumental in my experience of the tea. 12 years ago, I felt like I went through one major initiatory experience with the medicine, and I see now that I spent another 10 years just preparing for yet another initiation. For me, the work has been a lot about long cycles of purification, of clearing, of release, of discharge, of really creating an emptiness inside of my body, my psyche, my spirit, so that I could receive a much deeper healing. I feel that in some way that I'm just beginning to work with at this point. I have been empowered in a new way to carry the medicine, and I don't even know what that means or how that translates. It's the gifts that the tea have really offered to me are those of a much greater sense of well-being in my life, greater vitality. I think I've experienced physical healing as well. And I think most importantly, it has really expanded my capacity to extend healing energy to others. I really appreciated what Jeremy had to say this morning very much about the mindfulness that we all need to bring to making a choice around the work. I think the issues around set and setting are just phenomenally important. It is, in my experience, the medicine itself can be incredibly strong. I think the container needs to be equally strong. I think we need to be working in a context where we feel safe. I think that the importance of intention can't be understated. I think the degree to which we can bring intention and clarity to the work, that the benefit of the work will be commensurate with our ability to be clear about intention. And I also feel that the way in which we work to integrate these really deep and strong experiences are critical. So I think I'm going to stop here. I look forward to shifting this into a more conversational form, which I think for me will feel a little more natural. And so, yeah.
I don't know why so many people just got up to walk out, but if it's because of the atmosphere control in here, I totally understand it. Is it tuned to Arctic? Is what we've got up here? I'm shivering.
More light.
The lights warm us up?
No, we should turn them on and see you better.
Okay, but also can we make the room more Amazonian? That would be really good. I hope that there's somewhere there's control, because it's getting colder by the minute.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. Well, before we go to the conversational mode, I'm going to do my actual little presentation. And and I was asked to tell a little actually about my history with these plants. So last night I mentioned that I was a pretty dedicated traveler, and preceding that I'd grown up on an island in nature off the coast of California, and I had the good fortune to have parents who were very tuned in to that, to what is really my primary rule, which is paying attention, and paying attention to nature especially. And I was lucky to, I was taken to Mexico, my brother and I, when I was 6, and spent several months living on a beach and bathing under a waterfall back in the early 50s, before hippies did it. And I knew then, when I was 6, that that's what I was going to do, just a lot more of that. That was really good. Didn't wear clothes, hung out with native people, 8 plants that were growing, rode on giant sea turtles. It was just great. And then picking up in 1976, which is when I went with 2 friends, 2 men, to the Peruvian Amazon. One was a very shy man, Richard, and the other was, at that time already, an old friend of mine and newly my lover, Terrence. And we sought out ayahuasca and traveled over 700 miles of river and several villages and some really bad experiences on the way with drunken shamans and great disappointments until I was given a tip, and I'll give it to you as an ethnobotanist. It's go when you're looking for something special, some kind of plant, some kind of information, go to the marketplace. Every village and city in Latin America has a rich marketplace filled with, it's like an encyclopedia of what's beyond the marketplace. And go especially to the herbalist women, and go to the oldest woman who's usually back in the corner and she's the most respected, and ask her for what it is you're looking for. And of course you have to have the respect, the language, a sense of gifts, giving gifts, all of this. But a woman who I showed a picture of earlier was an old herbalist there, and she led us to a very fine ayahuasquero, Don Fidel Mozambite, whose picture was shown earlier today by Dennis. We spent, I think, 2.5 months with him. He and his mentor, Don Juan of the Road, Don Juan de la Carretera, and other visiting ayahuasqueros who would come to see each other's method and hear each other's songs and share brews. Don Fidel did a ceremony every Saturday night for the community, for healing, for singing, for a group of 25, 30 people. We did that. We lived there. He did a ceremony every Wednesday night for himself alone, or with 1 or 2, or at the most maybe 5 other practitioners. And that was for trying a new plant, a taste of something in the ayahuasca, or trying someone else's brew, or exchanging songs and techniques, and holding oneself up to the light and really reviewing the job you're doing. And I thought it was very important that the practitioners continue to take big doses on their own or in small company where they're not the hero, but where they're with peers, so that they don't go into the charismatic ego, double-edged aspect of the power of the medicine. I learned a great deal from him and the women who worked around him. I'll jump ahead. Many years later, I visited Ecuador and did an ayahuasca session with the Quichua couple, and he was called the ayahuasquero, and I was sent to him by a relative of his, and yet when I arrived, I found that she harvested all the plants. She pounded all the plants. She brewed them for hours. When a very, very sick young woman came, it was the wife again who fanned her, did the limpia for hours and hours to save her life, really. And he smoked a lot of tobacco, but she did 90% of the work. And she was not called an ayahuasquera. She was called the ayahuasquero's wife. And I just think it's like we need to keep looking at this. I'll keep bugging you about it, right? I showed a picture of her pounding on the leaf. That was her. Many women came to be around her, as you could see in that photograph, and midwifery and midwives and birthing. That all is closely tied in with sacred medicine in different cultures. I've been working with Mazatec Indians for some years now in Mexico, and the mushrooms and the morning glory seeds that they used are, especially the seeds, are related to the techniques, or used actually in birthing. And as we know, in some cultures, ayahuasca is used in giving birth. And so I hope it's okay if I get kind of stream of consciousness here, not linear, but but I think part of the power and the beauty of women in relationship to ayahuasca is that we have it built into our DNA. We have the marvelous ability to surrender built in, and we have it because we give birth. Whether or not we individually in this lifetime give birth to children, the fact that we're all here means we've really got that message really down, women do. And we have it in this way of, all the way from being able to be open enough to conceive and like germinate the seed and grow the being and then let go of the being. And so it's like the ayahuasca experience in that it's like turning inside out. You've felt that way, I'm sure. Well, that's what birth is like. It's like turning inside out. And I remember one of the Peruvian ayahuasqueros said, maybe it was Eduardo this was said to, I can't remember if it was me or him, how's that? He said, when I was a younger man and I was seeking, I was doing my apprenticeship to become a great ayahuasquero, I was told that in order to cross over into really knowing how to manage this and how to cure, that I would have to allow myself to be swallowed by the anaconda. Mm-hmm. That one day I would meet the anaconda, the huge snake, and the snake would swallow me. And you have to allow yourself to be swallowed totally by the anaconda in order to go across that threshold. And he said that finally in one session the great anaconda came and his mouth yawned open and I knew he was going to swallow me, and half of me went into his body, and then I freaked out and I fought my way back out. And so I'm just a small shaman. I'll never be a great shaman because that's what it takes, is to surrender. I feel like that's part of a gift that women have, is that ability to be the swallower and the swallowee, kind of, and the Kali phenomenon that you were just talking of too. And the recognition with surrender that it is all a matrix, that it is not just, we are not individuals lost in, swirling chaos, but that it is all a matrix. And so that trusting the boundarylessness of things is a real gift. The other half of surrender, though, is, of course, inappropriate surrender, and that's where I think we have to be careful. And as Eduardo said this morning, not over-credit the ayahuasquero or whatever situation you're in, not over-credit our guides with wisdom. It's not the person who collects the plants that has the power, puts the wisdom in it, and it's not the person who brews it, and it's not the person who gives it to you even. Changes can be made, healing can happen, energy can be moved, very good things can happen through the skills of individuals. But we have such a tendency to fall into hierarchies, to reinforce them and give someone above us more power and the power to tell us answers. And that's one thing I think about ayahuasca for me, is that it really raises beautiful questions, just great big huge, really unanswerable in words questions, and that then we get to walk around with those questions. We get to walk around as questions, and so I myself favor a more fluid and organic way of taking medicine, because I've learned to appreciate ritual a great deal as the years go by, but I think of ritual as a bowl that holds us, as a form that holds us, but without putting a lid on it. So within that form that we give it, we can then rise, we can then swirl and exceed our own imaginations, and together as groups we can raise great energy and bring light and healing into the world and spread it out again. But the open bowl is the level of ritual. If metaphorically, that I think really works better than structure where answers are given. That's the problem with religion so often, is that we stop asking the questions. We start loving the answers. And I just think we should keep on going with the questions. Thank you. I want to, having mentioned Terence, whom I do not mention when I speak, usually, but because of the situation now, I do want to honor him for being one of my teachers. And I have to say, I find him a very hard teacher. But you learn a lot from very hard teachers, you know. You learn things you don't want to learn, maybe, but you learn important things. And I honor him for that, and I honor him for stirring things up. And one of the great things about ayahuasca is it gets men cooking, right? But I do think it's really important that we stir things up. And many years ago, he started stirring it up, and here we all are talking about it. And it's not all his doing, but we need people who stir the pot, and that's a gift that he brought to our culture. I wish him the best. A little bit more about the feminine and plants and ayahuasca is in the way that as I understand it, many of the people who work with plants in the Amazon talk about that every plant has a mother. Some plants have a great mother, and some plants have a little mother or a tiny mother. And the mother is really the essence. And the great mothers are the great teachers. Tobacco has a great mother. Ayahuasca, these plants have great mothers. And the little plants, the one you might take for an upset stomach, they have little mothers. But you're always going to the mother of the plant when you're looking for the qualities, the healing, or the transformation that comes from it, the help. And I wanted to explain this term medicine and la medicina. In my experience in Peru and Ecuador, they refer to ayahuasca and to other aspects of nature as la medicina. That's an adaptation of the Spanish from the Latin, of course. But in these cultures that combine what is useful to them, as Eduardo pointed out, looking for the poetry of power and meaning, and they'll take it when they see it from any direction. Medicine is a really useful term because it's that which cures. And so they call it la medicina, but sometimes I would be walking in the forest, and I did go back to the Amazon in the early 90s and spend time with people who really knew plants in several different places, people I had known 20 years before and new ones as well. And, you know, maybe a beautiful butterfly would flit through the conversation, and everybody would stop and watch it, and a little old woman would say, "Es la medicina." Or a frog would croak in the night in a remarkable sound that brought everyone's chattering to a halt, and someone would say, "Eso es la medicina." This is the medicine. So it's a way of recognizing, paying attention to nature, recognizing what is the medicine. And I was taught there to particularly pay attention to that information which is unbidden, the information that you aren't looking for. And we're not very good at that in this culture. We tend to think, I know what I'm looking for. I drank my coffee, I got a project today, I'm going to go for that goal. But it's more when those little things, when something makes you reach out and touch a bush on the side of the sidewalk as you're walking down the street. Well, why did you do that? Then you stop, catch yourself and stop. Something spoke to you. It's the little things that speak to you that actually have the messages that make the difference. And that's a way of paying attention to nature that we can do wherever we are. When I teach perception and illustration, botanical illustration, as a way of seeing these little signals. And plant ritual as a way of honoring that plants transmit energy. Plants can be symbols, and those transmit energy, but plants in themselves take in energy and move it. That's why we sweep with the shakapa. That's why we cleanse with the leaves. And this native people do this all over the Americas. Move negative energy away, bring positive energy in, use plants, use the sense of the plants, and allow ayahuasca. Don't think ayahuasca is like, miles above all the other plants. It's these plants that are part of that complex are the sisters of all the others, and the cousins and the brothers, and so they help you expand. Take a walk in Golden Gate Park. Striping Arboretum right here is a treasure of the West Coast that has plants from all over the world that are absolutely stunning and beloved, and if you go there with ayahuasca eyes, you will be in the Garden of Eden, because that's what nature really is. So I'm going to stop right there. Thank you very much. Okay, so we're to our conversation point, and we came up with several questions that we are interested in discussing today. And I think maybe we should begin with the one on how we perceive the spirit of ayahuasca, how we perceive the spirit in terms of gender or character or even a visual description or whatever. May I ask you that first?
Sure. In a session on the banks of a tributary to the Amazon, ayahuasca appeared as a woman in the place of no time, no space, where past, present, and future are one, and I knew that I could ask her anything, and she would tell me. She knows. She has presented herself as a woman. I relate to her as a woman, although I firmly believe in the balance within, the balance of the masculine and feminine. We definitely need both, and she's a perfect example of that.
I had a vision once in which I saw a couple coming to me in a canoe with a male and a man and a woman, Indians, and they were bringing me ayahuasca, and the plant was a hermaphrodite. So it was really, interesting. Both.
As I mentioned earlier, the tea has always come through to me as a feminine spirit, but at times quite a wrathful one. And I mentioned the reference to Kali. In work that I did several years ago, the phrase came through to me. It didn't seem to be a function of my intellectualizing about it, but the phrase La Madre de las Medicinas came through just so strongly. And that's how I've held her since then, and honor her as the mother of the big mother. Yeah, she's a big mother. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Great. I know there are many portrayals of ayahuasca, such fantastic illustrations in Pablo Amaringo's paintings, and I encourage you all to look at those illustrations to, expand your own visual possibilities if they need further expansion, and by having images of how these plants are perceived as beings. The personification of plants is a wonderful topic, and you'll notice it all around. In our culture, we have kitsch mushroom personifications all over the place, and it's just something to notice how we see different plant species and how we put people to them, or they present themselves as beings to us in order to be accessible to us. It's, of course, not clear which which direction it's going, or both. But another question we talked about today, and please ask questions yourselves too. Okay. Do you want to? Yeah. Okay. We wanted to talk about any personal stories we had about the role of women, carrying the role of a woman in Ayahuasca society, or in the society in relationship to Ayahuasca. I know you have experience with that, Annelise, in Brazil. You want to talk about that?
As you heard today, the União do Vegetal is a very structured organization. It's a patriarchal hierarchy. I had difficulty from the very beginning being an American woman with this, but I realized that I had a great gift, a great opportunity to commune with Ayahuasca and with a spiritual group made of people I really like, I really respect, people with many years of experience, and this was important to me. So I put up with it, and I just didn't let it bother me for many years. In '91, I was staying in a log cabin in Colorado, and a friend from Brazil sent me the União do Vegetal newsletter. And there on the cover was a photograph of all the mestres. Every year, the mestres get together for a meeting. And it just hit me in the face as, my God, these are the people making all the decisions, not a woman in sight. And okay, it really got things going. And then I spoke to a friend of mine in the União who is a deep ecologist. She had been a member of the Communist Party in Brazil. She's missing part of her thumb, shot off. She lived in exile in Europe for many years, a very strong woman. When I told her in '92 that I was thinking of leaving the União, she said, no, you have to stay. We need more strong women. So I stayed another few years, and I left in '95. I felt that I needed to leave the structure to really fly free, to walk my own path. But it served me well. The structure really served me well. I appreciated the ritual. I appreciated the boundaries, especially with men in positions of power. I didn't have any a doubt that they would misuse their power. It worked well for me because of my trust in the people in leadership roles and because of their experience. It worked. And the União, it's true, it is a structure, it's an institution, an organization, but what they stress is conscientious conduct, integrity, respect, discipline, and those served me very, very well. It's part of my own upbringing, and I just, carry that further.
Do either of you want to say something about that?
Not yet. Yeah.
Not yet?
Well, I see, sometimes I just ask myself, how can certain structures be in the light of this powerful medicine and still, this kind of hierarchy that you're speaking of. It's such a dichotomy. I wonder how that can be, exist in the way it is. So I hope that the plant will inform with time and like a snake just go around these old archaic forms and patterns and crush them.
I don't have a comment on this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Let's see, we have one more question we'd like to discuss, and then we'll open it up to the audience. Diane, would you like to introduce this question?
We anticipated that this question might come up, and so we wanted to discuss it a little bit ahead of time. And it was the question of women being excluded from ceremonies based on their menstrual cycles. because I know I've been on one listserv this year that has had a very lively and hot debate about this particular topic. So we took some time today just to share our own views and stories and feelings about it. And, from the heads that I saw shaking in the audience, I'm actually looking forward to the time when we have the mic here too, because I think that a lot of you might have something to say as well. So that's the topic.
Mm-hmm. And do you have experience with that in either in this country or in South America?
Well, I've certainly had experience with women being excluded from ceremonial space because they were menstruating, and I've really part of me really wants to honor the tradition and trust that. I mean, this is definitely common to many. I know in North America it's true in relation to sweat lodge ceremony as well. And so there is a part of me that really trusts the intelligence of that decision, even though I might not be able to understand it. I was sharing at our lunchtime an experience that I had in Peru. It was during this diet period. There were actually several of us there, and one of the women in the group was menstruating. She had just started her cycle, and she actually was allowed to stay in the ceremonial space. And I can report that it seemed to have an impact energetically on what was happening. The shaman reported a certain ceiling on the intoxication, the vision state for himself, but I actually had many of us had the same experience of just of this quality of ceiling. So yeah, so it's a question in my mind. Yeah.
Well, it's a question whether we know that it's a very powerful state. And so the question is whether that power is beneficial to a group gathering or what kind of a group gathering. Where is it beneficial and where is it perhaps diverting power almost or shifting the group energy, I think. It's not that it's, I think it's sometimes portrayed in anthropological assessment at least, and maybe actually in indigenous assessment as that it's a bad state or a dirty state to be in, or but I think most women assume it's because of the power of the time of bleeding that we are treated differently at that time, and that often groups involving men and or intention to create a certain feeling and end would be hijacked basically by that power, and or that it might not be the kind of energy that the gathering was for, and that seems to me to be a reason to consider. A friend is telling me today that among the people formerly known as Kung in Africa, I don't know what their current name is, that women in the time of their flow are considered to be better healers, better at healing, because they can draw the disease, the dark energy off other bodies and let it flow through them and dispel it much more readily instead of taking it on and then having it in them. So it's a productive, open time for healing, at least in that culture. And I can imagine that being the case with medicine. I have experimented with medicines on and off bleeding times. But maybe it would need to be in a context where that was acknowledged, or where there were other women, more than one, who were bleeding, or only women together, or something like that. Do you have more, any of you, to say about this?
The União do Vegetal has sessions that are, 200 people, and I'm sure there are many women on their moon, and nothing is mentioned. There are no prohibitions.
Mm-hmm.
I certainly respect the societies that do. They have their own reasons. I have benefited from being on my moon in sessions, and I received a healing with that. I'm trying to make the story short. A group of friends got together to compare the difference between very fast-acting DMT and the longer-acting experience of ayahuasca. I was the first one to go. I didn't want any preconceived notions. And so I inhaled the DMT. And then 10 minutes later, because it just wasn't a very powerful experience, I thought, well, I'll come out of it, continue the circle around. And a friend said, well, why don't you smoke it again? So I did. Well, within a few, and that was an incredible experience. Within a few hours, I started to bleed, and my breasts swelled. Something was wrong. For a year and a half, I bled every time I drank ayahuasca. And I had been drinking ayahuasca for 14 years, not a single problem. So something offset my cycle. I went to Western medical doctors, to healers, acupuncturists, herbalists, you name it, in South America and the States. I tried everything. Finally, in a session with the União do Vegetal, I decided I need to ask the healing spirits for help. I thought I would need to down a full glass to achieve this task. But I was asked to translate the session, so I drank a lesser amount. And in a moment in the session, I asked for healing. And I was shown that because I was ovulating the night that I smoked the DMT, twice in a row, I was ovulating twice a month, and my body was just revved up. And I was so sensitive from having ingested ayahuasca for so many years that the DMT was just too powerful for me. And the message was, really pay attention to what substances you ingest, because you are sensitive. So, in a split second, my body was aligned, and I was healed. No more problems. So, ayahuasca's been good to me.
Well, shall I open it up now to the audience? If you have questions, and if you'd like to start, if anybody this little discussion a little bit, but you need to speak into the microphone so everyone can hear you. Excuse me just a moment. And there are people downstairs watching this on video, and if they have questions and want to come up and stand in line behind the microphone, they can get on the elevator.
I guess I just want to comment, because in this culture, menstruation has been so pathologized. And so everything that we hear about, it goes into that doorway. Mm-hmm. And even in cultures where it's about protecting women because of the energetic flow, because when we're bleeding, the energy is moving downward in our bodies. And when we're doing other types of work, it may be coming up. And that conflict can be very painful. I had an associate, we were at a Hindu gathering, and she was in a separate section and she was bleeding and told, don't do the mudras because you're bleeding. And she thought, oh well, did them and was violently ill for 2 days. So I think that we all need to understand that our menstrual time is an incredibly powerful, sensitive time when we are open to a level of astral energy that doesn't exist at other times in our cycle. And for us to really honor that and to recognize that some of these older traditions have factored that in. And if we can move out of the concept of pathology, then we don't have to feel like we're being punished or ostracized, but rather that we are either being protected or that we are taking care of the group because our power is so big at that time.
Mm-hmm.
So,
great
Thank you.
comment.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you. I have a question, a burning question. In my experience as a woman, in my ayahuasca sessions, which I've been doing regularly for the last 2 years, about once a month, and regularly, I have very much taken on Gaia consciousness, and I very much related to what a couple of you specifically said regarding Gaia. Our bodies embody, we fully embody the body of Gaia. Mm-hmm. And And my question is, in so doing, my experience is it's not simple. As we embody Gaia, we fully take on her pollution, her pain, humanity's pain, the darkness, the evil, and the purging necessary for her purification. And this purification happens through our bodies. It seems to be an absolutely essential process of healing the planet for individual people to take on this task to engage in the purification process. And my question is, as sort of a lone seeker in this, or one woman sort of isolated from many other women, not knowing how many other women also have this experience, and it was very enheartening for me to hear some of the things that you said, and very much relating and seeing the similarities. How do we purify the pain without completely collapsing in the process? There is so much taking on for Gaia's heart. There is so much pain that is embodied there, and it's how can I say this? It seems absolutely essential to fully enter into the pain as part of the purification process. And you had mentioned sort of the cycles of purification in your work, and so I'm asking for advice and guidance, and for all the women who choose to enter into this work to help the planet.
I would just say, trust the process. Really trust it.
Yeah.
Even if you don't understand it,
Yeah.
go as deeply
Yes.
into the pain as you can. Hopefully you'll have a good, safe container to do it in. But I think you've got to go, you can't resist any aspect of that. Any level of resistance will just accentuate your discomfort. So I think setting is critical, and then just going as deeply and fully as you can into the material.
Yeah, that has been the teaching, is to completely immerse myself and totally saturate myself with whatever the teaching is at the moment. My experience also, though, is it's not just localized into that one specific ayahuasca journey. It's like that's the trigger point, and then the next month I am engaged in a continual process of the purification. It's sort of like I track the circumstances in my life that sort of objectify in front of me pain, and so I'm encountering it through the other, and it needs to be processed through me. So it's also the walking the balance of, it's one thing to have the sacred setting to do the purification process, but also I think it's really important for all of us to be aware that our psyches, we walk away from the session carrying this work as well. Mm-hmm. And the importance, and so that's the struggle, is when I'm not in the session, how do I hold this pain and this high degree of sensitivity that arises from it to my circumstances, and stay grounded and be able to continue to work and so on. And I hear what you're saying. I think it is very important about trusting the process. It's Gaia is all around me, so it's a constant prayer on staying on the path.
Yeah.
Just a note, I try to remember when I see pain in the world in its many forms, that life hurts and that's okay. I learned that on medicine a long time ago. And, like it or not, it just is part of it. And it's the that's okay part that makes me then able to go into the next moment, which is to celebrate whatever seems wonderful that's around, because it'll keep spinning that way.
That's right. Thanks. Thank you.
I would also say to you to meditate on the great power of receptivity. The creative is embodied in there too.
Thank you.
I just have a small point that I'd like to make. I hope I can articulate it in a stumbling way. I really appreciate your point, Kat, about the sense of the women in ayahuasca panel as being perceivable as a kind of ghettoization of women's role in the larger arena that we're talking about. But I want you to know, as a man sitting in the audience, that what the four of you did today, I think, is better viewed, and you actualized it as being more like a high point of honor that could only have been allowed to come into being by just women being on the panel in a kind of, it was like an altar of high priestesses.
I have a couple of comments, and one was the very first time I went down to Peru to journey, it turned out that I was on my period. And having worked with Native Americans here for years, I thought, uh-oh, I better tell the shaman. And I did reluctantly, but I approached it with, I'd really like to do this. You know, I've prepared for it for a long time, and yet I'll honor and respect whatever it is that you do in your format here. And he sat with it for about 30 seconds, and then he poured me my dose, and he said to go outside of the temple and to paint my abdomen with the ayahuasca. Oh. Not the whole dose, just, you know, a little slight mess, save the rest for me. To paint, to paint my abdomen with the ayahuasca to create, using his medicine as a shield on my body. And it worked, and he had an incredible journey. I had an incredible journey, and the rest of the people had their journeys. And so it didn't seem to have any kind of a negative effect on the collective group there at all. And another comment is I've journeyed a lot, and probably 3/4 of my journeys up until a year ago, I bled, whether I was on my moon time or not. And I would turn it into, here we go with the sexual wounding again, you know, and start processing it, do another layer of that. And I got to the point where I could go outside of the temple and squat and just push out the wounds and literally go in the morning and see the clots that I had left. And then beyond clots, I was like, marbles were coming out, the globe was coming out, just things that I was seeing as I was just down there, hunkered down into the earth and pushing it all out. So I was giving birth, I think, to my woundings and my pain and releasing it on a cellular level, which I'm so grateful for. And now, for the last year or so, rather than bleeding in my journeys, what's come up for me recently as I do the praying to open that part of my body is the Pachamama, the Mother Earth, sends these serpents up and out and into my body and through me, and I'm beginning to have Kundalini experiences on the ayahuasca, and I'm very grateful for that. So there's great potential. Thank you.
Thank you for being in the women's panel today, and I just jumped out of my seat over there because I had such a profound experience journeying with the feminine. And during a session with eyes closed for a long, long time, I suddenly opened them, and across from me was a sister that's very dear to me. And as quick as I opened them and just glanced at her, I went right back inside. And I had an experience in my chest of a marriage of opposites that was profound. It changed my life with the feminine. And it was the marriage of purity and beauty. These were the qualities that were married in that moment. And since then, I realized at that point, I never really knew the feminine until that point. And since then, the feminine has opened up so big for me in life. It's just an incredible gift. And I just want to thank you so much. And I know I jumped up because I wanted to share this, that the feminine for me was never really known until these plants came along for me in such a deep way. So thank you so much for having the women's panel, and more, please. And may we see more equality in all levels with the feminine and the masculine here. Purity and beauty. Thank you.
Thank you.
I too would like to thank the four of you for this panel, and I was thinking, as I was sitting listening to you and hearing you describe some of the incredible experiences that you've each had with Indigenous women in different parts of the world and different parts of your journey. Many of those women are women of color, and I'm always struck when I come to gatherings like this. I mean, I travel a lot in the world, and I see how open and people are to making the gifts and teachings available. And I just wondered what, if any, thoughts you have when you come back to a culture like this and gatherings like this that are not diverse. And that seems to be the case, at least in my experience, whether they're men or women. So that's just one both comment and observation, but also I'd just be curious as to what your observations or experiences are, if any, and also I would just be curious, you know, the Western European tradition is one that so pathologizes darkness that I'm always struck, therefore, in conversations and dialogues, and somewhat suspicious when there's an overemphasis on the light. Darkness just is. You know, it just is. It's an aspect of the womb, it's an aspect of, you know, the seeds going. So I'm never quite sure and am sometimes confused about what that kind of overemphasis on the light is.
Would any of you like to say? Thank you.
You know, to me, I heard that more as an observation and not a question. I think it was really well stated, and I really appreciate you for heightening our awareness. So I just thank you for your comment.
I would like to say something about that. The Union de Végétal emphasizes the light. And there came a time when I really needed to deal with the shadow. And I dealt with aspects of the shadow in sessions with Union, but it was on my own, really deciding to embrace it. And it was during a second bout of hepatitis B that I just went full force into the shadow. And it was an amazing journey. You know, it involved yelling and screaming and expressing myself, because the Union is a mostly meditative ritual with talk, focus on the spoken word. Words open portals to greater understanding, so there's a reason for that. But I needed to be in my body, explore the shadow. And so I was able to do that, but not in the context of the Union de Végétal, because of the emphasis on light and harmony, because one's actions influences the energy of the whole. And that's very important to be aware of the waves. So there's a place for the light and the dark, and I honor that.
Well, I would like to address both parts of your comments. And where has that person gone? Where has she gone?
She's right over here.
Oh, thank you. I have spent time with such generous women and men in these other cultures, and you're right, all people of color. And one of the wonderful things about the kind of investigations excuse me, that I have pursued over the years in ethnobotany is that I'm always looking for something which cures, and even if it's not the big medicines, psychoactive medicines, it's the smaller medicines, but it's in that positive direction. And that seems to create an immediate camaraderie, and all the women I've worked with, it doesn't take too long before they literally say the words, we're sisters. Did you know we're sisters? And that sisterhood comes through so strong that the differences in race and background and class and formal education and all of those things evaporate. I mean, some of the wisest and most astute people that I know are illiterate. In fact, it's caused me to wonder if literacy is such a great thing, because their memories are so good. And their level of paying attention, they can't assume they can look it up somewhere, they just have to see it and know it. And this is true with women and men. And also, I try to be really careful to generously give appropriate gifts to the people who are helping me by teaching me things. And there's a recognition of that. I mean, they ask me, do you have an automobile where you live, and are your roads paved? And some things they've never heard of, and others they've heard of, and they're quite astute about the world that we live in here. And I try to be equally as astute about what it is they need, and it's often food for their children, or shoes for their children, or singing them songs. I mean, one night I sang old cowboy songs that my dad taught me to some people, and that just thrilled them. It was an exchange, And then on the question of the shadow, I have become over these years really, I'm a serious student of methods of protection. I do ritual protection of various sorts, usually using plants, always using clear intentions, before I go out into a crowd, and afterwards to cleanse myself from it, and before and during many kinds of just normal life proceedings. I think it's important for us, not because it doesn't mean you're a paranoid. I've been asked that question. I think it means you're attending to the fact that there is shadow energy everywhere too, and it's a way of paying attention. It's a way of being awake and kind of putting your daily blessing out there by your smudges and your limpias and the leaves you hang by your door, and I've come to teach this in the last couple of years. Just plant ritual that protects and creates clear space for us each to live our lives in or protect our children in or whatever. And I appreciate acknowledgement of it. It sometimes talking about the shadow in a crowd of really, sunny-eyed people kind of gets booed, and it can't happen. Yeah, thanks for that question.
Well, speaking of sisterhood, I want to thank you, my beautiful sisters, for a panel full of beauty and wisdom and truth. And I was thinking of what Connie said earlier about when her throat was healed, and she felt that was to open it up so she could start singing her Icaros, and that's what I felt going on here today. You all singing your Icaros, and may there be more of it, and may there be a rainbow of diversity, really. May these voices be heard, because we need to remember that we're talking about plants, and plants are organic and growing and evolving. So, we need to have room for that. Annelise, you kind of answered my question, which was going to be, why did you leave the UDV? But I just wanted to comment that when during the talk on the Ayahuasca project, when Charlie was commenting on some of the psychological testing, one of the things that struck me about the UDV is when he said the members were characterized by stoicism, and there were some things, about the order and the rigidity, and kind of what came up for me is, that's not what I feel a lot of times. My relationship with ayahuasca and the other medicines is it's more characterized by ecstasy and freedom, and I'd like to see room for the big mama, the big juicy goddess in this in this work that we do. And I kind of want to say, and maybe this is especially to some of us that are involved with some of the churches, that I think we need to really keep asking these questions. I'll just tell a little story that in the Santo Daime, there's a tradition of saying Viva, Viva Santo Daime. And only the men say Viva, and the women are quiet. And one time I was with another woman and in a little circle, and she said, why don't the women say the Vivas? And we said, yeah, let's say Viva. And, let our voices be heard. So I think it's that dance between the respect for the tradition that you were talking about, and also not letting things get sort of calcified and dogmatic, because I'd really hate to see that with these movements, that certain things get repeated all over again, so that we keep, that organic flow going, and may it just keep growing. So thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
I want to say that people in the União do Vegetal have ecstatically beautiful visions. I didn't speak about them today because I decided to focus on certain women's issues, but I have had cosmic orgasms in sessions. I've had the beginnings of Kundalini experiences, but I panicked twice and was only able to have Kundalini experience outside of sessions. But men, women have beautiful, beautiful, beautiful visions and experiences in the Union de Vegetal, but it just hasn't been spoken about much. People are private, they share amongst themselves, friends, but it does happen. It definitely does. I think that's why people keep on drinking the tea.
First of all, I'd like to say, as an utterly committed and choiceful urban dweller, I would be happy to inhabit your ghetto. And as a body worker, I'd like to address the issues that the first woman spoke of. I didn't read the name on her name tag, but she was wearing red. And it's really clear to me that this matrix that we're talking about is ultra-sensitive, and that our intention needs to be incredibly clear, crystalline, and pure as we work with the medicines. We've worked with a really stultifying and harmful patriarchal paradigm for a long time that emphasizes martyrdom, that we need to suffer, that we need to ingest pain in order to save the world, in order to connect with each other. And I really am on the side of embodying joy fully. And I feel that that is what Gaia wants at this time. So as a body worker, I've noticed that the state of being that I'm in when I work on a client is directly transmitted into the flesh of that person and into her energetic matrix. And I feel that it's really important as we do this medicine work to set our intention such that we're first taking care of our own flesh, this body, and making sure that all of its needs are cared for, and that we care for it as we would wish Gaia to be ultimately cared for. And for me, that means supplying it with the ultimate nourishment of joy and peace, comfort, material nourishment, connection with those that inspire. And so I would like to speak directly to that person and offer that as a response to the question she posed, and as not just an exhortation but an imperative to all of us that we continue to move in that direction. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just wanted to take a moment and share with you an observation that I've had in the place in Cerro de Mapia where I've been for 10 years and what's happened there. And originally when I went there in the 90s, it was pretty much limited just to people, native people who lived in the area, not native Amazonians, but people who lived in that area, and a few people who had come from the south. And when the doctrine started spreading out to the first world, and people from the States and the people from Europe started coming to Brazil, and they went to the south and eventually ended up in Mapia, things began to change. And so we've watched how the Daime itself has created this incredible alchemic process of bringing people from all over the world into the jungle, and then what happens. And one of the most beautiful things that I have seen is how the women have begun to find themselves in that town and in that context. And so when I went there 10 years ago, in the actual ritual itself, in the religious work, the women have always had their particular place and their particular power and their particular strength that I've always felt very balanced. But in a cultural way, in the society, in the village itself, it never was. It was very much male-based and kind of a male attitude that ruled it. And I've gone back, I've lived there for years, and when I went back this time, it was so beautiful because it was like the culmination of 10 years of this growing, and the women have taken over everything. They've taken over the schools,
They have their own healing center. They have a weaving center. The general kitchen is run by women. I'm not kidding. The women have literally taken over Mapia, and it's functioning, it's thriving, it's prosperous. People are happy, and I owe it to the once again the wisdom of the Queen of the Forest, who's bringing in all these agents and allowing everyone to find their right place. And so in our uniforms, on our pockets, we have the letters CRF, Comando Hyena da Floresta, Command of the Queen of the Forest. And so when we serve the Queen in a dedicated way, we all get to thrive in that way, and the women I have seen just blooming. So I just wanted to share some good news.
Yes, Ralph says we better close it. I'm sorry. I think we've reached the time. You'll have to catch us, I guess, in the hallway.
Being a woman with power, I'm afraid that I can't tolerate that. I will be brief. I want to say that visiting the Shuar in the rainforests of Ecuador, I found that one way they deal with life is that they re-dream the past to change the future. And that's a theme of the shaman. And so I would encourage everyone to maybe not dwell on the pain and agony that you've gone through, but to re-dream it for the future generations, like your grandchildren and your own children, and create rituals to welcome them in their passage into womanhood and give them the strength and the power to move forward rather than dwelling on your own pain in the past. So thank you for the time.
Thank you.
And I'd like to express my thanks and appreciation to four very powerful women.